prayer because Brian was walking by the mic. So I just, I remind participants to mute their microphone when speaking, when not speaking, to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. Council members in the chamber with us here today are council members Ellsworth, Fillmore, Hoban, McKay, Shipley, and Whipple. Haven't seen Shipley for a while. We also are we're joined by several members of the city staff and the council staff, and Wayne Parker, our chief administrative officer. The Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Councilor Dave Shipley.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Shipley. John, I know you love it. You want to read our meeting preamble for us?
As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following the presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comments on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will be generally limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action was taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commentators. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. To assist the city recorder with minutes, we ask those commenting in person to print your name on a slip of paper provided at the back of the room and place it in the container near the podium. Online commenters should spell out their names before commenting.
Great. Thank you, John. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment. And if anyone in the chamber would like to come up and make a public comment, please step up, or online, you'll want to follow the directions on the screen and raise your hand and unmute yourself. We'll call on you. Not seeing anyone in the chamber here and not seeing anyone online. We'll give it another second. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on. We'll close public comment at this time. Item 1 has been continued. Item 2 on our agenda is a resolution consenting to the appointment of individuals to various boards and commissions. Wayne Parker, will you be presenting this for us?
I hadn't planned to, but given the mayor's not here, give me just a second and I'll thank you for that. Okay, yeah, we did talk about these. So yes, so the mayor has recommended for appointment to boards and commissions, Bill Halterstrom to serve on the airport board with a term expiring. I will let the mayor step in. She's got.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome.
So
see what happens when we go over there. I will never get out. I get 5 people, a number, everything's an emergency. Really quick, where is Elizabeth? Is she gone? Malia, I've got 2 packets, one with a whole group and then one with only 3 names. Which are we doing? Just the 3 tonight? Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure on that. Okay. So I don't know if I'm just repeating what Wayne stated.
No, go ahead. Start over.
But all right.
He barely started.
All right. Thank you. Members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointments to Provo City boards and commissions as indicated and submit them herewith for the council's advice and consent. The first one will be for our library board, Jenny Spatafora. Jenny has been a teacher for years and has worked for the Love of Reading campaign. I am recommending Jenny be appointed to a 3-year term on the library board ending June 30th, 2025. And then the second member for the library board is Cindy Gagan. I am recommending Cindy be reappointed to a 3-year term on the library board ending June 30th, 2025. And then for our airport board, I am recommending Bill Holterstrom. Bill is currently serving as, and I probably don't have to tell any of you, as the president and CAO of the United Way and has served in Provo for many years. He has a deep interest in airports, a firm understanding of our airport, and practical perspectives that I believe will make him a valuable asset. I am recommending Bill be appointed to a 2-year term on the airport board ending June 30th, 2024. And I don't know, I didn't even look to see if Bill was here.
No, he came last week.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Just a funny side note. I don't know if he shared this, but he's obsessed with airports.
Yes.
Did he tell you that he bought a ticket just to go nowhere, but to get inside the new Salt Lake City airport so he could walk around and check it out? And he spent the whole day and was just, testing everything, going to every gate. And
Wow.
he just is really a good guy and loves airports and really cares about our community. So I think he'll be a huge asset
Very
to
cool.
the airport board.
Hey, staff. So some of the names on this resolution in front of us are different. So what happened?
Yeah, so the way that the council's process for approving board and commission appointments works is that, sorry, someone's walking in the office right now. So the council, Brian, I don't know if we want to pull up the council handbook and review this. In July, we were planning to do a review on the process for how the mayor selects board and commission appointments, and then maybe it would be good to overview the council's process. But typically, there is a 14-day period when the council reviews the appointments recommended by the mayor. And within that time, I contact all the appointments who are new and invite them to come meet the council. Just due to it being summer, a lot of people were out of town today, and then a couple of people had to reschedule last minute. So everyone who is being appointed tonight is listed on this resolution. I updated it this morning to reflect the appointments who are new, who will have already met with the council, including Jeff McLaughlin, who came in tonight. And then the people who have not yet met with the council, most of them are scheduled for July 12th and will be appointed after they do have that introduction.
I guess I just want to make sure we've met with everyone.
You've met with everyone that's on the resolution. The mayor included some names that you haven't met yet, and that's why they're not on the resolution yet.
Okay.
Is that
And-
that's my
and
understanding? Well,
the
you may not have met
resolution-
Cindy, you may not have met Cindy, but she's a reappointment.
It's
which
a
doesn't
reappointment,
require
correct.
a meeting.
Okay, well, then the mayor just gave us great info on one name, I think, that wasn't on here, but
Preview for next
a
time.
preview for next time.
Okay.
So I guess we're good.
Well, I think so, although Councilor Ellsworth looked like she still had a question, but
Yeah, I just, the mayor read some names and they weren't exactly what was on this resolution. So I wanted to make sure that this is the resolution, the correct
This is the
resolution.
correct version of the resolution. I updated it this
Okay.
morning. Two of the people so Jenny Spadafora, who the mayor just referenced, she was one who had a family emergency come up and couldn't come today. If you actually scroll down to the exhibit, exhibit B for the library board, I just changed it so that it says appointment pending. So that's where Jenny's name will go on July 12th.
Oh.
Similarly for the, which I'm trying to remember which board was it? I think it was Parks and Recreation. There's a pending appointment because one of those people couldn't come today. So this is the correct version of the resolution, though, that I updated this morning based on the latest information.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and sorry for the confusion. Appreciate
No, I
the
didn't know
introduction.
either, so I had both, and
Oh, I think we're
We'll
good.
figure it
We're
out.
good. We're voting on the resolution, not on what you said. So,
Exactly. perfect.
We're
Why
okay.
do I get up and talk then? No, I'm just
well,
kidding.
it's because it's such a pleasure.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. So let's just get confirmation the resolution's correct, right? And at this point, then we need to call for, well, we need to discuss, right? Is there any, and these are appointments, so there's no public comment. So we'll bring it to the council. Any discussion or questions? Okay, then we will call for a vote on the applied motion. Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
yes, sir.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I, Chair Hoban, will vote yes, and Vice Chair Hanley is excused. So that's unanimous here in the chamber with Counselor Hanley excused. All right. Next item is an ordinance creating 2 new mixed-use zones and amending various sections related to the regulation of those zones. Citywide application presented by Javin. Welcome, Javin.
Hi. So last 2 weeks ago, we went through this pretty robustly. I'm happy to go over that if you have any more questions on that, but I just want to update you on a couple of things that have happened since then. One thing that we did is that we added in this language here that I highlighted in blue, saying that these zones are intended for areas designated as mixed use in neighborhood plans and in the general plan. These zones are intended to be located along collector or arterial roads. These zones are not intended to be located in areas where they would have a significant impact on single-family neighborhoods. And I just want to go over the signage that would be permitted within the mixed-use zones, just so we have clarity on that. And all of the language within our sign code. This is not new code that we're implementing. It's just the types of signs that we would permit within these zones, which would be a freestanding sign, which would just be within the mixed-use zone only. A wall sign, an awning, new construction sign, monument signs, and A-frame signs. And then I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have or go through anything that we went through last time.
I am curious, since these like neighborhood mixed use and that these will go in different areas then, because before our mixed use was only around campus or downtown, correct?
The mixed use, it shows it on various neighborhood plans.
Yes,
But
we didn't have a
this-
zone for it.
We didn't have a mixed use zone that would be more appropriate for other areas outside of the campus area.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
with the intensity, this has 2 different scales of intensity for that general purpose.
Yes. Yeah, I like the zones. My question is, when I read through the ordinance, it does allow for lighted signs. And I am concerned about that in some of the neighborhood mixed use zones where they could be across from residential or something. So I'm curious about that.
So with backlit illumination for signs, we have not had any complaints for backlit signs within the time that Bill said for 30 years here.
But we don't have many.
Correct, but we haven't had any complaints on existing signs for that. Now, we do regulate sign brightness already, but we haven't had any complaints for those types of signs. If we have electronic signs within areas, unless it states where the long or short hold could be, the default is it could transition once per hour. But again, that brightness is already regulated by code.
Okay, so was there any consideration on allowing a lit sign if it was across from residential home, like single family homes or?
The location of all of these are on collector or arterial roads. So primarily they aren't affecting single family neighborhoods for the direction and placement of other signs would be.
So I live on one of those streets in a single family home. So I can see how you could end up with that in one of these zones, because by designating this as an area for potential mixed use, what you would do is mix up the use, right? So you could have that conflict. Am I right in understanding that we aren't allowing electronic signs in this?
We technically allow electronic signs unless the section 1438 explicitly prohibits that land use zone. Now, I would recommend that we could amend this to add in these 2 zones to prohibit electronic display signs. Now, I would also want to clarify, we don't allow animated signs in the city at all.
Right. Well, I'm thinking about the Blue Rock sign, which is an electronic sign that's on a commercial property across from a residential area. And residents have complained about light coming into their living rooms at night and things like that. So I think that's the kind of situation that we'd like to avoid.
And one thing we could do, we could add in just having a time frame that the sign could be turned off, perhaps. If that's, I think that's permissible. So we could do that to prohibit it potentially from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
I think something like that is necessary for sure. We approved the Dairy Queen one. And that was one of the things that was the agreement there that they would turn it off outside of business hours. We have apartments. This is going to be across from apartments. It's going to be across from single family homes. That is going to happen. Just like the stadium's across from single family homes, right? So I think in just light pollution and everything is we don't need that. And I think that it would be a good move for the city to limit that when we're expanding mixed use to the whole city.
Who else had a comment? Councilor Fillmore?
Yeah, I guess, Jeff, what we're asking is, it seems like there's several potential amendments to what you're proposing. One would be that we don't have any electronic signs that are flashing in the mixed use zone. Another is that the backlit signs do not face any residential elements and affect them, whether it's cross street or down the street. There might be restrictions on the size of such signs. I assume you're open to all those amendments.
The size of signs is already regulated by the width of the building, the ratio for a sign.
Okay.
Can I interject? So, Brian, I know we have determined based on like case law that you can't, unless it's like if you allow a sign, you have to allow it to be electronic, internally illuminated, right? Unless you've determined it's like a historical downtown area or something like that. But aren't there problems with enforceability and case law and all that of why we can't say, sorry, your sign over here, you have to have a non-illuminated sign or electronic or LED sign, and over here it can be.
Well, the city allows that just as a matter of, that was a decision of the council, not as a matter of law. I mean,
I guess in certain residential areas, they're not allowed at all.
Well, yeah,
right?
we don't allow them in residential areas. And I'm talking about electronic signs rather than backlit signs. We don't allow them in residential areas. For a long time, they were allowed only in certain areas of the city. There was, the sign committee that was convened, met and discussed this for a long time, and ultimately came forward with a recommendation to allow electronic signs everywhere, with other than residential areas, with some different restrictions. So there were restrictions on brightness that were imposed. The city was divided into 3 different zones that determine which hold time applies. That was
these areas, are these traditionally, these would be considered residential then?
Well, Javin, let me clarify something and make sure I'm not misunderstanding something. The ordinance that's before us right now creates 2 zones that are not actually on the map, right?
Correct.
So passing this doesn't do anything at the moment because these signs don't actually exist anywhere. These zones don't exist anywhere. So now it creates the potential for that because once you approve that such a zone can exist, then somebody can come in with an application and try to and ask you to put it on the map. But that's ultimately your decision at that point. You don't have to. But so I just wanted to make clear that the zones that you're voting on tonight don't exist anywhere in the city.
But we're creating them with the intent of using them.
Yes, yeah. But I just want to clarify that because it affects the timing issues that you're talking about to some degree. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the implications.
I mean, there's a lot. Yes, the sign committee talked about a lot of enforcement issues, and that was kind of part of the reason. There was a former counselor that believed quite strongly that if the sign was abiding by the brightness restrictions, and if the sign was abiding by the transition requirements that the council had applied, then there wasn't really any difference between a backlit sign and an electronic sign. They're both emitting light, and as long as they're both following the rules, there was a feeling that there wasn't really any difference, and there wasn't a reason to justify allowing backlit signs in an area and prohibiting electronic signs in an area when they're both doing the same thing, as long as they're following the rules. And that was kind of what led to, that was the argument that the councilors accepted that led to allowing electronic signs everywhere that backlit signs are allowed.
Okay. In this case, we're creating two new zones. They might end up with residential. And so we have the option at this point to say, what options do we have as far as what we can do in signs in these zones? Can we say right now they shouldn't have electronic?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm trying to get to, is what can we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's any of the things, I mean, all those things were discussed by the sign committee. They were discussed when these zones didn't exist, right? So you can create buffer zones, you can create curfews, you can create,
Okay.
you can prohibit them. Again, referring to the argument that I mentioned before, I suppose it's possible you might get an argument from somebody that, well, why can I have this backlit sign and not have an electronic sign? But there's
Okay.
no black and white answer that says you can't do that.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you. I guess I needed a refresher course on signs. So, okay. So back to Bill, because I interrupted you, Bill.
No, you're fine. Thank you for the clarification. So, I for one would like to put this off till the next meeting. We have further internal discussion, a little more research.
I second that.
Is there something specific? Okay. So there's a motion. We'll discuss the motion. Is there something specific that we want staff to come back with? Because we need to give them something actionable that they can come back with so that this can get approved.
Sure. I'll make some suggestions. I'm a little anxious that mixed use zones mean mixed uses, right? With residential. And I think we're going to find some opposition in a lot of neighborhoods if we impose a mixed use zone there where they feel the lighting is inappropriate. And so I'd like the staff to take a look at things like banning, what do they call electronic signs that have the transitional lighting, and but also to ban anything that faces a residential element across the street or in that vicinity. I'd like to address size as well. If that isn't somehow governed by some other ordinance. Those are just some preliminary thoughts.
Councilor Ellsworth, did you have a question or comment?
I had a question. Do we have to go to public meeting before we vote on a motion, or can we just vote on a motion? Or not public meeting, but a hearing?
Oh, to take public comment. I'm trying to think through, there's a technical rule that came up in a situation, trying to remember exactly how this got continued to this meeting. There's a rule in the handbook that says if an item was specifically put on a certain date, that you have to have public comment before getting rid of it, unless you actually vote in an earlier meeting to change the date. This one I don't think was continued to a date certain, so I don't think that rule applies. I think it was just continued to the next meeting. So you don't have to take public comment in my estimation, because I don't think that rule applies in this instance.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Councilor Whipple, go ahead.
Yeah, while I like the idea that we're going to clarify sign and lights and the effect that could have on existing structures, I did want to express my appreciation to the staff for working on this. I think this is great as an overall thing, and living on a street where we have a little mix of commercial and residential, this is exactly what we need to have really vital communities. And so that, for those busy collector streets and things like that, if you can have more little shops and things like that people can walk to from the adjoining single family residential area, that's great for the city. So thank you so much for working on this and making it possible for us to create a zoning to comply with all of these neighborhood master plans that called for something like this.
Thank you.
You're just excited to put concrete back in your backyard again and start an at-home business, aren't you?
May I ask a question for
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore? So in the zones, it calls for different types of residential use. It calls for a single family, or it could have townhomes or apartments. So you could have an apartment building across from a single family house, which is also allowed within the zone. And so I just want to know what type of residential use you would not want that sign facing. If it's an apartment versus directly in front of an apartment, is that permissible rather than like what type of scenario?
Thanks for asking the question. My instinct is it shouldn't face any residential dwelling. That's just me.
So
I agree.
I have a different opinion. But go ahead. I'll always defer to you council members first. Go ahead. Okay.
Are we saying that's just for this zone, or do we need to rewrite all of our sign ordinances, period, including like static billboards that shine into or next to residential zones? Because I'm generally in favor of that, but I'm also cognizant that the sign committee spent at least a year going over technical light stuff I can't even begin to describe, right, Travis?
Yeah, I didn't even understand it, but yeah.
So,
It's
I
a
mean,
good
are we looking at just for these mixed use zones? Because I'm sensitive to that, and I think that we want to make accommodations and make a residential area livable. But are we also are you recommending that we go all the way and evaluate every sign ordinance?
No, that wasn't what I was recommending. but
Okay.
It may be a logical consequence.
Okay.
But I think with respect to mixed use zones, where we're going to have mixed uses where there's a residential component, we need to be sensitive to our residents.
I agree. And I
So maybe
Actually-
this is kind of a test case, if you will, or
we
see where this goes.
we brought this up, or I brought this up a year ago when we were talking about lighted signs. And I thought, if you're going to put lighted signs on South State Street and then they are permitted, there's a lot of residential areas down there. And there's folks on second and third floors where the light will shine into their windows. And people did not seem sensitive to it back then, but I'm happy if we're changing direction.
So I guess just for sake of discussion, I'm envisioning a mixed-use building that has shops on the ground floor and then condos or apartments above. And these shops want to have a sign that advertises their services. And so I feel like we currently allow signs in those types of situations, and we don't get complaints because I think people moving into that setting understand that they're moving into that setting. So I guess I view it as like, it's kind of an essential part of mixed use that you allow signage, to advertise or promote these businesses. I'm thinking of like, is it Shirley's Bakery? And then just south of that, there's a bike shop and a bank. And then just south of that, there's an apartment complex that has like shops on the bottom level, and they have a sign. Alpine Village, thank you. So like, I guess maybe I'm naive. I don't think that those residents are thinking like, oh, I wish that sign weren't there. But so that's the type of setting where I'm thinking we need to allow signage in those types of situations.
I think that's a legitimate question you raise, but the examples you're using are existing areas where, it's already done, right? We're talking about, do you want to proliferate that in future mixed use residential areas?
Can I add something here? I just remember Hannah Salzel when she was I think she was working for the council staff on the sign committee, right? And she had lived in the city to the north of us where they have this mega bright sign, two giant signs on like University and State Street. And I think she said she lived a half mile away, or she lived a quarter mile away. And she said she could read a book by that light at night.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, I can see it from my house. I can.
It's a beacon.
It's crazy.
A beacon of commerce.
I guess I'm just trying to balance. I'm thinking in my mind, balancing, we're trying to create these mixed use areas where we have cute little shops on the bottom. But you're saying, no, this is what we're doing is we want to put a sign next, Rachel wants to put a sign up and So I get that. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I think the difference then from the examples you are saying is that these are going to be put in corners that could be on three sides from residential that's been a neighborhood up until this purely residential until this neighborhood mixed use may go in there. And I agree with Rachel that we totally need this zone. But I think we'd be really cognizant of the people, the zone that these people moved into, and this didn't exist then.
We could always pass it more conservatively and expand it down the road, I guess. I don't know. That's one thought.
Yeah, I will say that not all lighted signs are terrible. So like the City View apartments that are on 3rd South has, their backlit City View apartments. It looks really classy to have that up at the top of the building. And if it weren't lit, you wouldn't be able to see it at night, right? But it's not illuminated in the kind of way that becomes a nuisance to any of the neighbors around them. So I think there can be a good balance.
All right. Well, there's a motion that's been offered and seconded, and I think that motion is basically for staff to come back with some recommendations around signage, what will be allowed, brightness, internally illuminated, LED, times, what will be facing, what it will be facing or not facing, size, and come back with some recommendations. So do we want to hear that in a work meeting before we vote so that we don't have another meeting like this where we're kind of like,
Good idea. Yeah, I'd be in favor of putting on a work meeting. And if I might just kibitz a bit, Rachel's referring to some tasteful backlit signs. She would know the parameters better than I do, but maybe there's a way to calibrate that. So we get something that, quote, tasteful, which just sounds very subjective, right? But maybe there's a point of demarcation where you qualify some signs that shouldn't be obnoxious to the neighbors. I don't know where to draw that line, but we'd look to the staff maybe to make some suggestions.
okay, we'll go ahead. If there's no further comment, we'll vote on the motion. Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple. Well, actually, what are we voting on?
To continue it.
We're just continuing it. Do we need to vote?
Yes, because this is actually the second.
Second hearing, okay.
Automatic continuance is a first hearing.
Okay, so Counselor Fillmore was a yes. Counselor Whipple?
Sure.
That's a yes.
Ringing endorsement.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor McKay?
Yes.
I, Counselor Hoban, vote yes. Counselor Handley is excused. Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
All right, this is unanimous in the chamber with Counselor Handley excused and a sure. All right, Javin, thank you so much. Sorry to put you through one more round of this, but we'll get it figured out. Hang in there, Javin. We got you next. An ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 6.3 acres of real property generally located at 1265 South 500 West from one family residential to public facilities and open space, preservation and recreation, Lakewood Neighborhood. We heard this, we discussed this in the work meeting. So Javin, I'm not sure how much you need to go into it, but what else would you like to say?
Let's go to the next slide. Again, the Southwest Neighborhood Plan that designates this area as a park. The Park and Recreation Master Plan that was recently adopted has this area as a future park. The neighbor meeting that I attended, it was positive feedback, and all of the comments I read in Open City Hall were positive feedback, and they are excited for this to eventually happen from Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay. Any questions for Javin? We asked some questions in the work meeting. We'll open this item up for public comment.
Applicant is here if you.
Becky, are you still neighborhood chair? All right. And you're also the applicant. So please come up if there's anything you'd like to say about this. First of all, thank you for bringing this to the council and being so actively engaged in your neighborhood all the time.
Yes, I tried really hard from the work meeting that you guys put forward to make sure that everything that you asked for was there. I contacted the electric company, Rocky Mountain Power, which is now, I don't know, Pacific Corp or whatever they are, to get their permission to do the public facilities like Dave Shipley had asked for that upper portion. And they were willing to do that. So I tried really hard to make sure that all of your desires were in this when I went ahead and submitted this. I do want to say that we are very grateful for your support for this and any support that you could give us. We do need this expansion to our park. We do need a rest area, a place for our kids to use the bathroom. We do need a place for our kids to drink. We would love a pavilion. We would love some different amenities that just cannot happen on the current parcel that is owned by Utah Power and Light. I'd also like to point out, clear back in 2016, and I emailed you guys all this, and you guys probably had time to read it, but this has been a part of the master plan, the parks master plan, for years. Absolute years. And when the pocket neighborhood was brought up, the neighborhood was really upset about that because that is our expansion piece of our park. And some of the neighbors went out and they collected signatures, and they got over 200 signatures. But the biggest portion that I want to read, and hopefully I can get this, that master plan, the parks master plan, wasn't just done by our Parks and Recreation. It was also done by consultants. And so in that email that I sent you guys, that I sent to John Curtis clear back in 2016, it states that this neighborhood needs a park. We have enough people and the need for this park. And that was way back when this was done in like 2013. That was before all of the development happened. Now we have another 110 homes in the Osprey development that wasn't even considered by the consultants, not even thought about by the consultants. Now we have 210 townhomes that are going in down on the bottom of Lakeview Parkway and Fifth West. We also have another 80 some odd homes going in for Heron's Landing. It was that much needed that many years ago. It is so much more needed today. And the neighborhood would appreciate the city to follow up on their master plans and on their words and continue to make this a park. And if it's at all possible, please continue it as soon as possible so we have a restroom for our kids. And I'd like to also bring up, this isn't just our kids that are urinating there. We also have a huge problem with city staff relieving themselves behind the Google Fiber building. So it is a very major need, because you think on that corner, we don't just have energy, we also have sewer. That's a pheromone dosing station, which dumps pretty chemicals into the sewer so it smells better by the time it gets to the plant. We have a Google Fiber station, and all that is there. We have energy, we have public works. The need for a rest area is there. It's great. If not, my poor guy in a wheelchair is watching them do their business behind the Google Fiber building. So please, whatever resources you can give us would be very much appreciated. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Becky. It's always so colorful when you talk.
Well,
All right. Actually, that was the first place Becky took me when I did a tour when I was campaigning. She said, I'm going to show you the park. We got there and I said, okay, where's the park? Just a bunch of power lines. All right. We'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Any additional questions or discussion? Bill or Councilor Fillmore?
I believe the city has done its homework on this. It looks like a good proposal. I'm fully supportive.
Great. Thank you, Bill. All right. We will go ahead and call for a vote on this. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor McKay?
Yes.
Councilor Hoban will vote yes. Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore?
Yes.
That's unanimous in the chamber with Councilor Handley excused. Thank you, Becky. Next is an ordinance amending the permitted uses in the West Gateway Zone citywide application. First time presenter, Sione Manoa, planner.
Thank you guys so much. All right, so I want to specify the area and the zone, just so I can explain a little bit better. When coming off the I-15 South exit onto the interchange into what is stated on the current general plan as the front door to downtown Provo, leads you to the West Gateway Zone on West Center Street, ending off about 600 West and Center Street. The applicant, Mr. Mijares, is requesting a citywide code amendment to the WG zone to add 4 new uses in the zone. Those uses being new and used car sales, service stations, and automobile repairs. The applicant is located at 920 West Center Street. The Sinclair on the corner of West Center Street and 900 West has a pending business license that currently cannot be approved by planning due to the type of use not being allowed in the WG zone. The WG zone, in correspondence to the general plan, identifies this area as a regional commercial uses and mixed uses. This area being stated in the current plan as the front door to downtown Provo should be of high development standards and uses. The reason for the WG zone is to try to improve the entrance of the city going into the heart of Provo. The goal is to encourage this area and avoid used car sales. It was designed specifically to leave out car sales in the West Gateway zone. That being said, adding new and used car sales, service stations, and automobile repairs in the Westgate zone citywide would hinder the general plan. Planning Commission recommended denial with a vote of 8-1. Staff and Planning Commission recommend denial for the proposed ordinance text amendment change to section 1421D 020 permitted uses in the West Gateway zone. Thank you.
Any questions for Sione? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this item up for public comment.
I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. The applicant, are they here tonight?
I don't see the applicant here.
Okay, thanks.
All right, doesn't appear we have any public comment in the chamber or online. So we'll go ahead and bring this back to the council discussion. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I want to keep the opportunity for a business owner to be able to apply for his spot, right? And you know, the example of that in this gateway area is the Maverick, right? It's not part of the West Gateway plan, but it's, I think everybody, I don't know, I think most people would agree it's pretty well done. It looks pretty decent for a gas station, right? And I think it adds to the road. So I guess what I'm saying is I think to change the entire area over this one property, I'm against that, but I'd welcome the opportunity to look at a specific project and say, yeah, we can make an exception based on, you know, a lot of good planning. So anyway, I think there's opportunity for that, but not for the full area.
I watched the planning commission on this, and I don't think that I don't think it adds to the entrance. I think it's a poor use of that prime real estate as far as an entrance and gateway to the city. So I agree with the city and the planning commission that this isn't the best use of that valuable space.
Did the planning commission discuss at all the applicant coming back and just asking for something on his specific parcel?
No, and they had issues with that specific parcel even doing
Even
it.
then?
Yeah, I mean, it's a space where they'd be doing a restaurant, a service shop, and new and used car repair and fixing of cars and then selling them. There's parking issues and the presentation, visibility, like what it would be is your vision as you came in, and yeah.
Okay. Comments, Councilor Whipple?
I remember looking at this project and thinking that it had some really interesting elements. Like, I love the idea of a restaurant or cafe for while you're getting your oil change or your car repaired or something like that. So there were like some really creative elements that I thought were fun. But I do share the concerns about the way the whole project works. And I am hesitant. Well, no, I'm opposed to changing the entire zone for this because I don't want to make it so that that entire West Gateway could become a car lot, which would be possible with this kind of change.
Okay. My 2 cents, I'm not opposed to the applicant coming back and asking for to be able to do business in that area. So I guess I'd just take it on a case by case basis personally, but I agree. The whole zone or the whole area seems a little much, but I guess I'm curious, at any point was the applicant advised that that might not be the best approach to try to, yeah, okay, still proceeded with it. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and vote on this implied motion.
I just want to say something. I think it's bold that anyone wants to build a car dealership right now, and given the supply chain constraints of the fact that there's few, if any, car dealerships that are getting inventory.
Yeah, I'm just saying if he comes up with some great business idea and thinks that and we decide it's a good fit.
He was buying damaged vehicles and fixing them and would be selling them. So he'd have a lot of to be bringing in damaged vehicles from accidents and stuff and then fixing them and putting them through the system. Just FYI.
Yeah, I guess I just am thinking like that could be done tastefully with fencing. I don't know. I don't know. It's just my personal opinion. I don't want to try to tell somebody not to do business, but maybe he comes up with a different business idea. That's all I was saying is, case by case basis. That's all I meant. Councilor Fillmore.
I'm thinking in terms of the larger goals with our West Gateway. It makes sense to me that when we have an applicant looking for some kind of retail development on West Center going out to the freeway, that he be advised by planning people that we're in the midst of taking a long, creative look at a holistic approach to enhancing that entire West Gateway, and that they ought to be advised that that process is underway, and that if they're going to make a request such as you're suggesting, whether it's an individual exception or changing the zone, they'd be well advised to visit with you folks in planning to get some sense of the larger aspirations the city has for that area.
Yep. All right, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. Councilor Shipley. The implied motion.
The implied motion is to accept this change. So I vote no.
Councilor McKay.
No.
I, Councilor Hoban, vote no. Councilor Ellsworth.
No.
Councilor Fillmore.
No.
Councilor Whipple.
No.
That is unanimous no, with Councilor Handley excused. Thank you, Sione. A resolution approving an interlocal cooperation agreement authorizing Provo City's participation in the Utah Valley Home Consortium for federal fiscal years 23, 24, 25. Melissa McNally, planner, will present this to us. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Good evening.
You cut your hair.
I did.
Looks
I'm just
great.
gonna keep cutting it till it's gone. So easy and nice. So the resolution this evening is to continue participation for Provo's continued participation in the Utah Valley Home Consortium. And I thought that I would just give you a brief history of the home program and the home consortium, in case you're new and aren't familiar with it or have just been confused in the past by it. So the home program is a grant program from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it is used for housing purposes. So home is kind of self-explanatory. It's used for several different housing options, I guess is the word. The consortium was originally formed in the early 90s, and it was made up of several entities within Utah County. And Provo, it came to Provo to kind of head the consortium, because at the time it's a formula grant and it's based on the funding that you're already getting from HUD. And at the time, Provo City was the only entity within Utah County that had funding from CDBG. So we became the lead entity for the home consortium, and we still are to this day. And currently the consortium is made up of Provo City, Lehigh City, Orem City, and Utah County. And as the lead entity, Provo has oversight of the funding and all the reporting of the funding back to HUD. So some of the things that the home dollars do in the communities are, you can use them for property acquisition for the purpose of housing construction, construction of new housing, both for home ownership and for rental, providing financial assistance to low-income first-time homebuyers, and tenant-based rental assistance. In the past, we've also used it for rehabilitating homes. There are quite a few in Provo that benefited from that program. Some of the projects that we've done recently throughout the county are mutual self-help homes in Payson. We've got a senior housing program or senior housing project in American Fork, senior housing project in Springville, the Crown Homes program here in Provo City. This is a Habitat for Humanity build. This is in Provo. It was done a few years ago. Currently, Provo, we have our office, the Development Services Office, has 2 down payment assistance programs that we administer. One is for the Utah County, and the other is for Provo City. So the one that we've been running in Provo City has been in place for just a little over 20 years. And this is kind of a breakout of all the neighborhoods where we have used or assisted homeowners with down payment assistance to purchase their homes. We've currently, let's see, I wrote this down somewhere in case you wanted to know, 301 homeowners have benefited from this program in Provo City since 2007.
Some of these colors are kind of close.
They are
65, 50, and 41. Do you know what 3 neighborhoods those are?
Let's see.
If not, no worries.
65.
So 50 would 50 be 10?
It's either Dixon or Mazer.
Oh, 50 must be Franklin.
Yeah.
Dixon would be 65, maybe, and Mazer. Okay.
Yes,
Get
they
it.
are.
I get the
They are
general
very
area.
close.
I get the general area. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So the participating in the home consortium just allows municipalities who choose to participate to have home dollars used in their city. So every municipality that participates, they're able to have like a first-time home buyer purchase a home with down payment assistance through this funding, or some of these projects like senior housing projects, or some of the I know in the past we've assisted the housing authorities with different housing projects. So participation, like I said, just allows the municipalities to have home dollars used in their city to help with affordable housing. So, and that's it. Do you have any questions for me? Yes.
Yeah, can I just ask, why is it, I've often wondered why some of the cities in Utah County don't participate. It seems like we've got a group, that, is there a minimum threshold of housing units that they?
No, they just choose not to. Every time that we renew the consortium, letters are sent to the municipalities to say, you're welcome to participate. Please notify us by such and such date. I think the cutoff was March 31st. I'm not sure why they are choosing not to, unless maybe they just don't completely understand how the home program works and maybe what they're missing out on. So there are a few cities that did not opt in again this year. So.
Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud, but do some of them view it as like a government thing that they'd have to comply with, that they just don't want to comply with? Because there are restrictions and rules associated obviously with these
Right. And I
grants,
think I think there is that fear. I don't know because I'm just stepping into this in the last month or so. It would be nice to, like Eagle Mountain they used to participate in the last couple of times we've done the renewal, they've opted not to. It would be nice to understand why they did once, but not now. So.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm curious, as far as Provo, has our participation been equal, or have we doing less lately? Like where are we at?
So there used to be a breakdown. They'd try to use, I think it was around 49% of the funding stayed in Provo. We've had a lot less applications the last few years. So the funding currently is of the award that we've just received for the 22-23 year. Only about 200,000 is being used in Provo, and that's for the down payment assistance program. The other programs are throughout the county. So as time has gone on, it's less and less in Provo and more within the county.
Yeah, that's the impression that I've gotten too. I'm wondering if there's advertising we could do about that to try and capture more of that, especially for the down payment or, habitat homes or stuff like that. I don't know if that might be a good thing to do through our neighborhood program to just make people aware. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. It would be great to maybe advertise more or encourage more applications. I know this last year there were only 2 applications for the home program. So it would be really nice to see those numbers come up. I think the other part of the problem, especially with places like Habitat for Humanity, it's the purchase price and getting enough funding in place to purchase land and purchase a home to rehab. Let's see, I have that number also. So our current median home price in Utah County is $540,917. And according to the home rules, our funding cannot go above 95% of that median purchase price. So trying to get homes and property below that is proving to be very difficult. We are looking at revamping our down payment assistance program to provide some gap financing because it's really hard to get that money moving as well because people are just priced out of the market and aren't able to buy the homes. So we're looking at doing some changes.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, we'll now open this item up for public comment. Online or in person, let us know. Okay, doesn't seem to be any public comment on this. We'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on this. Do we need to review the resolution or everybody good? Rachel, you usually like to read through these things, find spelling errors. Can we pull up the resolution? Okay. We'll go ahead and vote on this. I'll start with Councilor McKay.
Yes.
Councilor Hogan will vote yes. Councilor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore,
Yes.
Councilor Whipple,
Yes.
Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
That is unanimous with Councilor Hanley excused. Wow. Halfway through, folks. It's going to be a fun one. All right, next is a resolution appropriating $238,557 in various funds and transferring $63,557 from the Legacy CIP Fund. Kelsey Zarbach, Budget Officer, is going to present to us today.
Good evening. It's the end of the fiscal year almost, and we keep close tabs on how departments are doing with their budgets at this point in the year, just because we want them to stay within the budget before July 1st hits. And so a few areas where we've been watching and we just think that they could use appropriations to get through the rest of the fiscal year are Peaks Ice Arena and water. Peaks Ice Arena, it's actually, they're victims of their own success. They've had some really successful programs that they've just had to spend a lot more money on because they've had more participants than they anticipated for based on, previous year's trends with the pandemic and things like that. So they are asking for $100,000 to be appropriated in their expense budget, but all of that is backed up by revenues. And so they're just basically saying, we're making all of this. We need more money just to help balance things out for the programs that we've been spending money on. And so that's the first appropriation. The second is for the water fund.
Kelsey, before you move on, let me just clarify that.
Mhm.
You're saying that they're victims of their own success.
Yes.
So they have revenues now that are surprisingly large.
Very high revenues. Yes.
They had extra expenses to cover all the customers.
Yes.
So they're in a position to cover those additional expenses.
Yes.
So we're just talking about a paper issue here.
Yes, exactly.
We're not really talking about a true appropriation in the sense of giving them additional money.
Yeah.
We're just changing the line on their budget.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just a requirement that we ask the council to make that adjustment on the paper for us. So that's for Peaks Ice Arena. Water, they're just trending to be a little over budget compared to what they were originally budgeted for. They're asking for $75,000. In large part, they've had to bring a lot of wells online, and the power costs of that are higher. And also along with that is they've had to pay a lot more for chlorine costs. There's some state requirements that you have to add some chlorine to some of their spring houses and wells. And that cost for chlorine has gone up quite a bit. And in addition, the treatment bills from Central Utah Water have been higher than anticipated this year, also related to chlorine costs. And so they recommend a $75,000 appropriation from fund balance.
Russia. Go ahead, Councilor McKay.
Public Works is so big, right? And they have been hit hard by inflation and I know chlorine is crazy expensive, even hard to get at this point. I would love to, what I would love to see though with Public Works, I'm putting it out there that I'd love to do a Public Works board.
Okay.
Like we do the other entities, we have an energy board, an airport board, and Public Works probably has to be our biggest entity as far as what they spend and, how much they have to do and stuff. And I think it'd be great to see that done. We've done a lot of appropriations for Public Works so far since I've been here, which I believe they're all legit, but I just think it'd be nice to have citizens and others on a board for the Public Works.
And I believe that would fall into the administration's hands to kind of work with you on that.
So Kelsey, this is going to
Yes.
sound naive, but can't we pass this on to the users of water? Or, how do we recoup, these costs? Because over time, costs are going to continue to go up. What's our plan to try to get back in the black, so to speak, with this budget?
Right. I know this year the plan is to use fund balance to just help true up where they're falling short. I haven't talked to Dave Decker or Jimmy specifically about a plan moving forward. I'd imagine you could raise rates if that seemed to be the best course for this type of issue. But yeah, I would want to definitely consult with them on
But
that
yeah,
kind of-
maybe not for 75K, but my guess is,
Chlorine might
costs are
still be
just,
high
costs
next
are
year.
just going to keep going up and up. And
Yeah.
at some point, yeah. All right.
The final appropriation on the on the agenda tonight is for the council office, actually. I'm sure, John Magnus, if you want to say anything about this, feel free. But in the new city hall building, it wasn't, when the bond went out, we did not know about Zoom rooms at that point in time. And obviously Zoom is a huge component of council operations. And so in order to help get that new council chamber up to speed with that technology, the council office is requesting $63,557 out of the legacy CIP money. And so with that, it would be a transfer from the legacy CIP to the general fund in the council office. So those are the three appropriations in this item tonight. And so if you have further questions.
I think recoup that council office cost. We just start charging people who come to our meetings.
Yes, for every public comment. I think that might raise some eyebrows.
There's like two people here. They each got to come up with 33K or 31K.
Congratulations.
Okay. Questions? Go ahead, Councilor Shipley.
This is kind of along the lines of Councilor Fillmore's question about the appropriation. So when we list, funding sources like for the ice sheet and also for we're not saying, this is coming from fund balance, we're appropriating from fund balance, but we don't really account for it as something that we're going to pay back to fund balance, even though we're saying ice sheet has all these great revenues. We're not going to say, hey, ice sheet, you've got to pay back fund balance, based on this. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure and clarify for mainly for the public. We're doing an appropriation. We're using fund balance. Even though they've got higher revenues, we're not asking them to pay this back as like a loan.
Right.
We're just, because we did this with the golf course last year too. We just said, look, operations require more expenses than we had anticipated. We've got to close that gap before year end and make sure their fund balance is in order. So we have to appropriate from our city's fund balance to make that happen. And I guess I'm just suggesting that when we say funding source, we should just say fund balance, because the ice sheet revenues aren't going to pay for this appropriation. They're not going to pay it back. There's no payback schedule. This 100,000 might not come back to fund balance. We're just closing a gap that needs to be closed for the year. Is that accurate to say it that way?
I believe so. The way that my brain thinks about it is like you had the revenues come in and they added to fund balance, and then you are basically using fund balance to increase your expenses. So it does balance out, but maybe that's just because I'm thinking in accounting terms.
But as far as the department itself, it's not like if you were to line item ice sheet, it's not adding to fund balance by 100,000 this year, more than what we'd anticipated.
Well, they are expecting that much in revenues to add to their fund balance. And so since they were going to get $100,000 in additional revenue, they thought they could use that same amount to.
So are you telling us it's intra-departmental that we're making it? Because I interpret that we're making an appropriation tonight from our city's fund balance, not from the department.
Oh, well, so I guess it goes back to how you have, so there are basically three different funds on this appropriation tonight. So the ice sheet, they have their own fund balance. And so the ice sheet revenues are helping the ice sheet fund the $100,000 in expense tonight. But water isn't affected by that. Am I understanding your question?
So this appropriation is not coming from the city's fund balance. It's coming from a department fund balance within Parks and Recreation to fund the ice sheet.
Yes.
The one for water is coming from
Water's fund
balance. Okay. So these aren't city fund balance
It's not
appropriations.
general fund.
Okay.
No. The only thing that general fund is being affected by is the transfer from the legacy fund to the general fund to cover the Zoom room.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No,
I
thanks
appreciate
for the
that.
question. We appreciate it.
All right. Let's see. We opened this up for public comment already, didn't we? Or did we not? Okay. We'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Doesn't appear to be anyone online. So we will go ahead and close public comment. We'll bring it back to the council for discussion. All right, no additional discussion. Counselor Ellsworth.
Yeah, I'm wondering, given some of the conversations we had today, if we need to be rounding up on our technology. I think we found some more gaps. Does staff feel confident that this is a number that this is the amount of money we need, not just to accommodate audio and visual in the council chambers, but also audio visual in a room where we would hold closed meetings?
Yes, this is for both the workroom and the council chamber. The closed session room, we would just do what we normally do with the computer that one because it's not open to the public. So if a council member is not attending, we'll just still use our laptops to bring them in. The other two rooms is for the public. If they're not in the room, they'll be able to watch it via Zoom. The public will never be invited into a closed session.
Okay, so when we have a closed meeting, how will the audio be recorded?
Through Zoom like we currently do. Nothing will change for that.
Okay, so we'll have effectively Elizabeth at her desk in a different room and then another laptop in the closed meeting, and we'll be recording the Zoom meeting from someone's laptop?
Well, we record it from the computer in the closed meeting room currently.
Would it be similar to what we have right now for
Yeah, we'll
closed
still use
meetings?
that same computer.
That's not the top of
Yeah,
my
it doesn't
computer,
work
is it?
great, to be honest. It's hard to hear people and
It is hard to hear people.
We can talk to them about improving that room.
I just don't know if that's just like long-term, if that's a sustainable, if that's how we want to approach it, you know?
We can look into it, see what that would cost. I don't think that would be that much because it would be just a matter of improving the microphones in that room so we could hear each other. And maybe something we can strip out of the old room.
And we were in there today and it didn't seem like there were any microphones wired into that room. So I'm very comfortable rounding up to like 70,000 so that we get what we need the first time.
Yeah, we'll have to ask them. And like I said, we do have the old equipment in the old workroom that we might be able to strip out of that room and use just for that purpose only.
I'm just feeling like I want something better than what we have today because it is very difficult to hear because you basically have a camera and a mic on the TV. So if somebody's on the back end of the room and you're on the virtual side, right? The online side, it's very hard to hear people and hear the conversation. So it's just long-term, it's not a great solution. I'm not criticizing you, by the way. I know, I'm just saying, I think we need to do it right if we're thinking long-term, that's all. So I don't know if that means we appropriate this today and do something else later, but in any case, go ahead, Brian.
But just as a procedural matter, appropriations are a little bit tricky because they require special noticing. And so the notice that went out is your maximum cap. So you can't increase it tonight. You'd have to do another appropriation for the difference.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just add, I agree with Chair Hoban, and I've been on the Zoom end of closed meetings, and I can hear everyone chewing. I can hear everyone moving napkins. I can hear almost everyone, but sometimes I can't hear the speaker at the other end of the room. And so I think this is supposed to be kind of a top of the line building, and we're going to do it right the first time, and we're not going to build a technological Band-Aid. So whatever we need to do subsequently, I'm in supportive of, so that future councils and the public have, and the city recorder have what they need.
No, we can talk to the supplier and have them come look at that room and tell us what we would need to do to bring that up.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on the implied motion as is. Back to me. Counselor Hoban votes yes. Counselor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore?
Yes.
Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Counselor McKay?
Yes.
That's unanimous with Counselor Handley excused. An ordinance adopting a tentative budget for Provo City Corporation for the fiscal year beginning July 31st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $384,034,697, setting a public hearing to consider a proposed change in the certified tax rate and amending the consolidated fee schedule in Provo City Code Section 4450. Kelsey Zarbach again will be presenting this.
Okay, shifting gears from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. So at the last council meeting on June 7th, the council made a motion to start the truth and taxation process. And so what needs to happen is the tentative budget would become effectively the budget starting on July 1st until the new budget is adopted or until the council finalizes the budget in August. At that meeting, the council also adopted some changes that we presented, just corrections or some new information that had been added. And since that meeting, we've had some additional changes that we wanted to present to you. I will say the bulk of the changes, so basically today we were just going through comparing our budget spreadsheet with the charts that are in the budget book, just making sure everything cross-referenced appropriately. And we found that there were a few instances where transfers out had been listed with expenses and then also on their own line. So some of the amounts are going to look large. On our budget spreadsheet that we use and rely on, everything was right from staff throughout the city. It was just more in the summary documents that you see in the tentative budget that we found those mistakes and made those corrections. So I just wanted to give you a heads up because some of the numbers you're like, oh, well, but they're just the transfers out that we realized shouldn't be included with expenses. Before I get to all of those, I want to point out up here, these are just the changes that have happened since June 7th. There aren't as many as what you had seen 2 weeks ago, but we received the tax rate from the county. And so our baseline property tax number is $100,000 lower than what we had projected originally. And so that's probably the most significant change to the budget is we had to decrease property tax revenue based on the certified tax rate. And that was $109,516 below what we had expected. Fortunately, we're running all of our revenue projections again to see if we could find a way to bridge the gap, keep the budget whole. And the municipal energy tax rate revenue, there's kind of a lag on when it comes into our system. And so the projections for that had been based on data that wasn't complete when we put the tentative budget together. And so based on how revenues were looking for that, we felt comfortable increasing the municipal energy tax rate revenue. And that's just in the general fund. It's one of the other taxes if you were to look at the general fund summary. So we felt comfortable with that projection. And miscellaneous revenue budget, last 2 weeks ago, we had a line that said revenue increases for the general fund. And it was, I think, $127,621. So if you add up all three of those amounts together, it still comes out to $127,621. We just tried to break it out a little bit more coherently there. The rest of the general fund wasn't really impacted. We just found a few little tweaks here and there based on some changes we presented last week where we realized we needed to just increase the dollar amounts by $15, $20, or $91 in those instances. The library property tax rate also came in and their revenues were a little bit lower as well, but only by $12,000. So we made that correction. Engineering CIP, that was an instance where the transfers out were counted twice in the budget book, so we took that out. Same with Parks and Rec CIP, we took out the transfers out from the expenses. Water also had a situation where transfers out were double counted, but that top one underwater decreased CIP expense budget due to lower revenue projections. That came from Jimmy McKnight in Public Works and Dave Decker. Basically, they had anticipated some revenue coming in and then realized it wasn't going to make it. So they just decreased the CIP budget by that $1.2 million. Wastewater, something similar happened with their CIP. They had some funding that they thought would materialize and they just received word that it probably wouldn't. And so they decreased their CIP expense budget by $6.5 million as a result. And that other line item was a transferred out error, similar to the debt service fund. So those were the only changes since the June 7th meeting. We just wanted to make sure that the budget was accurate and wanted to make you aware of those corrections.
Kelsey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
if I'm reading this right, are we having, let's see, show me the second page. Just looking-
If I can get there.
Okay. We're looking at a shortfall of almost $8 million in revenues that were anticipated by Public Works.
I suspected that could come up. If you were to look at all of the changes total that we have made like June 7th and tonight, then you would see that there is not a shortfall in that area. This is just looking at the changes specifically for tonight. But if we were to go down, thanks, Malia. I'm not sure how the clicker works with this. If you go down and take all of the changes into account as a whole, we have basically $10.7 million added back to the budget. A lot of that being the transfers out, corrections.
Let me ask it a different way. Reassure me.
Yeah.
that Public Works has not lost $8 million in anticipated revenue.
Oh, I see what you mean for wastewater and water. I don't think I can
I mean, that's a
reassure you on that.
Pretty big deficit all of a sudden. Help me understand that.
So I know that they had some revenues that they, maybe some grants. I'm not sure what all the details were with that, but they had some revenues that they were hoping to secure so that they could consequently fund some projects. When the revenues didn't show up, they're like, oh, well, if the revenues aren't going to be here, we don't want to budget for the expense side of things. And so that is the story at this point that I'm aware of from Public Works.
So maybe Wayne can help us on this, but if $8 million roughly in anticipated grants are not coming through, what projects are being dropped or deferred?
And I am not sure on those details.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Counselor. Again, we do the best we can with our expected revenues when we present you the budget in May. Sometimes funding cycles for federal and state dollars don't coincide very well with our budget. So the answer to the question is, rather than keeping sort of a false hope that those dollars are going to materialize for the project, we take them out of the budget, and then we'll have to come back and regroup and figure out which projects we delay, defer, whether we go after additional funding sources, and that will come as we work through the CIP process with you.
Okay, so in other words, that element of the budget is evolving.
Yes.
And so you will either come back to us with some bad news and say, yep, we had to cut these $8 million worth of projects.
Yes.
Or defer them.
That's correct.
Or good news, we got the grants after the budget cycle.
That's correct.
Okay.
Could be either of those options.
All right.
Yep.
Is there a tentative sense of if we don't get that money, what we're likely to have to cut?
Well, again, it could be entire projects, getting pushed back. It could be, and again, looking at particularly the wastewater fund. I mean, we've got a $300 million wastewater treatment plant that's under construction. But again, it's being built in phases. And so that would likely just be pushing a phase back a year while we try to figure out other funding sources. So again, it would be scaling back or potentially going to for example, a wastewater project that might be a capacity improvement somewhere that ends up getting pushed back a year.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we'll just adjust the CIP to match the real revenues.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll open this item up for public comment. Thank you, Kelsey. Where's Melanie today? No comments online. Nobody here in person to comment on this. Okay, go ahead and close public comment. We'll bring it back to the council. Any discussion? Bill asked some good questions. Okay, we need to vote on this. So we will go ahead and call for a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore.
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I, Counselor Hoban, will vote yes. So that is unanimous with Counselor Hanley excused. At this point, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 7:15. Sorry, Keith. Nobody complained about this one.
No, I think it's right.
I'm losing it.
Just go, and I'm break.
and the parties intend to consider incentives for a future development. Keith Morey is going to present this, Economic Development Director, and David Walter, Director of Development Agent, the Director Redevelopment Agency. We heard this in the work meeting.
So I'll be brief. But just to kind of recap really quickly for the public's benefit, earlier this year, the state legislature passed some legislation that basically tried to resolve issues with cities incentivizing retail projects and their effort to try to address that, to minimize that opportunity. And basically that state legislation goes into effect in July. And because as cities, we kind of commented that there are projects that we're involved in right now that we may not be able to finalize before the July 1st deadline. We wanted a provision that would allow us to move beyond July 1st if we felt like there was a need. And so one of the projects that we've been working very aggressively on is this site at the corner of Center Street and Geneva Road. And that's been historically kind of set aside and anticipated would have a grocery store element. So we've been negotiating in good faith with Kroger's and Smith's and feel like we're very close to developing a site plan that they'll be presenting to you in the future. But we still don't have all the exact details for that worked out and that deal finalized. And we are asking the city council to approve this resolution, this memorandum of understanding that preserves our right to negotiate those terms ongoing after July 1st of this year. So if you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer them, but that's kind of the basics of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions beyond what we had in the previous work meeting? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll open this up for public comment.
Good evening. My name is Rick Magnus with AWA Engineering. We are the consulting engineers for Kroger. And, you know, I'm new a little bit to AWA and definitely to this project. I think it has a bit of a history here. And I have seen since being at AWA, this has moved up the charts to be a site for Kroger. I also wanted to just let you know, you have wonderful staff and they are doing a wonderful job helping us navigate through everything, working with us. I only knew Keith from the waist up for so long, and I realize he now is complete, so that's really good. Yeah, and we appreciate Keith relaying the desire to have something over here on the west side, and also for you, Mayor, we are focused. And so I just want to let you know, you have wonderful staff. We are looking forward to moving forward with this. And I'm here to answer any questions, but we definitely appreciate your support for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes, Mr. Magnus, is it?
It is.
It is. We know how to spell it.
Spelled the same way. Thank you.
Good. Do you represent Kroger or do you represent an engineering firm?
We are the engineering firm that represents all Kroger's and Smith's in the Intermountain West.
Okay, so there's not necessarily like a broker or an employee of Kroger. It's you.
Not here tonight. They're in Ohio and gosh, are they still back? They didn't even cross the Mississippi, the ones that would be here, but we are here. They have a local person also here, Roger Goff, who has worked for Safeways before it was Kroger for about 40 years. So I told him I would be here tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Any additional questions? I guess you're just public comment, but any questions for Mr. Magnus?
It's great to see you. It's great to that Kroger wanted to send someone or have a representative here is good news.
Good. It is. It is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? I thought we might hear from Becky on this one. State your name, please.
Not at all. Becky Bogdan. Do I need to spell that for anyone? Anyone?
We know it. We know it.
Okay, so I put this out to the West Side neighborhoods and positive feedback. There was some concern of when they will start or if they will start. But I don't think I have to tell anyone that the majority of the West Side would really like to see this to go forward. Super excited about it, especially if it's a larger store. And if, to be honest with you, Jonathan Hill and I had a conversation, and I'm like, it depends on the store whether I'd be willing to go up there or not. But I think I would go up there first, miss, especially if they carried products that were more towards a family instead of more college student products. That would be amazing for the West Side. Thanks.
Additional public comment? All right, council discussion. Council Film.
I think based on our work meeting discussion, there seemed to be pretty strong consensus that this is a favorable advance and movement forward. We just would like to hear as firm a commitment as we possibly can from you folks that this is real and your intent is wholehearted and not just a place marker. Can you say that? Or?
So that it comes on record, yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Appreciate that.
When's the last time we had someone from Kroger here, Keith?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Other comments? Questions? Obviously, just want to say thanks to you all for pursuing this. And we kind of discussed this in the work meeting, but you guys have been plugging away. The administration's been plugging away at trying to solve this problem for us on the West Side. And this is just another attempt. So we appreciate the efforts and hopefully it's fruitful. All right, we'll go ahead and we will vote on the resolution. Councilor Fillmore. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
Councilor McKay.
Yes.
I, Councilor Hogan, will vote yes. Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
And that's unanimous with Councilor Hanley excused. Oh, hold on here. Okay, so at this time, if there is no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting and convene as the Provo City Stormwater Service.
Let's not do that yet.
Wait,
You have
what
some
did
more
I
items.
miss?
You have another MOU, item 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was a page ahead. Yeah. We have two?
Yeah, the other property.
You're on item
Okay.
10 right now.
All right. All right. This is, sorry, guys. I don't know how I got confused. Yeah, my bad. To me, they were looking the same. All right. So this is a joint resolution of Provo City Corporation and the Redevelopment Agency of Provo City announcing their intention to prepare a joint development agreement for the development of commercial development in Southwest Provo. This will also be presented by Keith Morey.
Okay. So again, this is the same kind of agreement as what we talked about before. But there's another piece of property that's at the intersection of 500 West and Lakeview Parkway, right between the I-15 corridor and 500 West on the north side of that Lakeview piece of property. Historically, that had been agricultural. About a year and a half ago, I guess now, we asked the city council to rezone that to commercial to show our future intent. And since then, there has been a property owner and a broker that represents a prospective retailer that is interested in doing something on that site as well. And so the purpose of this item is to preserve that same opportunity should there be a need at some point in the future for somehow to participate in some way to allow that to go forward. And so that's what we have before you tonight is the same kind of an agreement that you did on the Geneva Center Street piece of property for this piece of property as well.
So just to make sure I'm clear, this is another piece of property that could potentially have a retail or grocery store on it.
That's correct. Or something like that. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure Mr. Magnus heard that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've tried to be clear with them that
Totally joking.
this is a very important issue for us in Provo to try to address the grocery store gap on the west side. And that we think, it's important enough that we want to pursue and preserve all of our opportunities. So we've been pretty open with them about that, and they understand.
All right, we'll open this item up for public comment. You can only vote for one, Becky. Which one do you want?
Travis, you know where my house is, so you know what that answer would be. All right, I'm going to put on my neighborhood chair hat here for a minute. And Becky Bogdan, Lakewood Neighborhood Chair, just for anybody interested. Retail in South Provo, let alone Southwest Provo, is very much needed. Anything, I get asks for even children's clothing. I guess Ross isn't enough. Grocery store. There's a lot of things that lack Provo that a lot of us just jump on the freeway and go get someplace else, whether that is Orem or Spanish Fork or Springville or wherever. So that is very much needed. Then I'm going to say, on the other hand, those that live on 500 West have a lot of, it's their homes. That street wasn't constructed for what it's going to be used for. And so there's a lot of hesitation there and a lot of concern and a lot of, what does that mean for me and my house? Also, those that live along the dike or the street across the street, my husband, have concerns about what is that going to do to my property, my quality of life, the lighting, the noise. I think we have some of a pretty good framework of, the 60-foot barrier. There's some things we probably need to iron out a little bit more, but those are just things that we would like to take into consideration is as you look at things and as you look at traffic and as you look at the expenses of what the city's infrastructure is going to look like, there's a lot of need, especially in that southeastern corner by the freeway it's all over West Provo, right? But it just ask, for the peace of mind of those residents that live there, if you can take all of that into consideration, as well as the very well need for any kind of retail in the city. Thank you.
So basically, Becky, you want a big giant grocery store, but you just want it to be really quiet and not bright and not drive a lot of traffic. I'm just kidding, but
where I live,
it's
I'm not
hard to have
concerned
it all.
about the traffic, but those on Fifth West are. But I don't want it very bright or very noisy. But hopefully we can resolve those issues. I'm sure that's common throughout the entire city. You're going to bring something in, please be respectful of what's already here.
I think so. I think the city would do a good job of that. Thanks, Becky. Okay. No additional public comment that I can see. So we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council. Any discussion? We did hear this in work meeting as well, so have a little discussion already. We'll go ahead and vote on this implied motion. So Councilor Whipple,
Yes.
Councilor Shipley,
Yes.
Councilor McKay.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Councilor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore.
Yes.
That's unanimous with Councilor Hanley excused. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Now, if there is no objection, we will adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting and convene as the Provo City Stormwater Service District by unanimous consent. Councilors, you will want to turn on your mic and speak up if you object. See no objections. Let's see. I'm still running the Stormwater Service District, right? Okay. Thank you for the nods. Item number 11, a resolution adopting a budget for the Provo City Stormwater Service District in the amount of $6,283,912 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. This will be presented by Kelsey Zarbach, again, City Budget Officer.
This is the second public hearing out of 2 for the Stormwater Service District budget. And This is just an opportunity for citizens to comment on it. And then tonight would be the evening to adopt this budget. It's not subject to the truth in taxation since you're a different entity. So any questions for me?
This is just an opportunity for public comment, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll open it up for public comment then. Seeing no public comment, we'll take it back to the council for, well, yes, there is a discussion because we're going to vote. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on this implied or on this resolution. Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor
Sorry.
McKay.
Sorry, Chair, because this is a different agency and they don't, the agency hasn't adopted our handbook. This actually requires a motion because the implied motion rule doesn't exist in the system.
I saw that there was no implied motion and it threw me off. Thank you.
So
We need a resolution to adopt this, or a motion to adopt this resolution.
I got you covered. I'll move to adopt the budget for the Provo City Stormwater Service District in the amount of that number for the fiscal year, July 1st through June 30th.
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Ellsworth. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Now we will go ahead and vote on that motion. Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Counselor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore.
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
That is unanimous with Counselor Hanley excused. We will now adjourn the Provo City Stormwater Service District. If there is no objection, we will adjourn and convene as the Redevelopment Agency of Provo by unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, we'll turn it over to Chair Ellsworth.
Thank you. And welcome to the Redevelopment Agency Governing Board. We have 3 items and then I think we will be done for the night. The first item that the board will consider is a resolution adopting a budget for the Redevelopment Agency of Provo City Corporation for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $1,203,488. And this will be presented by Kelsey Zarbach.
This is, again, a second public hearing opportunity for the public to comment on the redevelopment agency's budget for fiscal year 23 before the council adopts it. So any questions?
The council won't adopt it, the board will
Sorry,
adopt
yes,
it.
the board.
I make that mistake every time.
No, thank you.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. All right, we will open this item for public comment. I assume there's no one online.
Not that we could see. Nope.
Okay. Okay, let's move forward. Is there any board discussion? Okay, well then we will
I'd like to make a motion.
call for a motion.
We adopt the budget for the Redevelopment Agency of the Provo City Corporation for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $1,203,488.
Thank you. That motion was made by Board Member Hoban and seconded by Board Member Shipley. Great. Okay, we will do a roll call vote, starting with Vice Chair Whipple.
Yes.
All right, Board Member Hoban.
Yes.
Board Member Handley is excused. Board Member Fillmore.
Yes.
Board Member Shipley.
Yes.
Board Member McKay.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So it is unanimous amongst the 6 of us and Board Member Handley is excused. All right. The next item is a joint resolution for a memorandum of understanding with Smiths and the parties' intent to consider incentives for a future development. This will be presented by Keith Morey.
So these are the same items that we saw as a city council. We're adopting these within the redevelopment agency as well, just because there could potentially be property involved. And if so, we would want to transfer that property from the city into the redevelopment agency so we could negotiate. So that's really why you're seeing it from both agencies.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
Pardon me?
I'm not seeing any questions
Okay.
from the board, so I think we're good there. We'll open this for public comment.
Good evening. I wanted to get on the record under the redevelopment agency board, and you look familiar to me. And if I'm going to get my money's worth, I'm going to do that. Okay. Anyway, Rick Magnus with AWA Engineering here in Salt Lake City, Utah, representing Kroger and Smiths. And I'm going to reiterate on this record also that you have wonderful staff and they're a pleasure to work with. And this is a challenging site, but we're all indication that we are going forward with this. So I'm here to answer any questions. Grateful for your consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any questions or is there any discussion?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This is actually for Mr. Magnus. Is like, how quickly could we possibly get this done? Like to have an operational store?
So if we were to anticipate with the moving parts, and I kind of lean a little bit to Keith's side, just a little bit, but I would anticipate with construction, some help with expedition of process and making sure that the gap analysis is within the margin that we need, 2 years. Our construction schedule is 12 months to 15 months. It depends. We know a lot about this site already, and it's not really a surprise. And so that's our construction schedule is 12 to 15, more like 13 to 15. But then it's the processing in between that. And we have a few agencies to work with. You've seen that tonight. So with all hands on deck, we could see 2 years.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Magnus.
Thank you.
Any further discussion from the board? Okay, not seeing any. A motion is needed to adopt this resolution. Oh, there we go.
I'll make a motion to, where are we? Adopt the memorandum of understanding with Smiths and the party's intent to consider incentives for a future development.
Great. Is there a second? By Mr. Shipley. Oh, the motion was made by Board Member McKay, and it was seconded verbally by Board Member Fillmore. All right, we will take a roll call vote. Let's start with Board Member Shipley.
Yes.
Board Member McKay.
Yes.
Board Member Fillmore.
Yes.
Board Member Hoban.
Yes.
Board Member Handley is excused. Vice Chair Whipple.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that is 6 votes in favor and 1 absent. All right, this is the last agenda item. Let's see, we will now consider a joint resolution announcing the intention of Provo City and the Redevelopment Agency to prepare a joint development agreement for a commercial development of a store in West Provo. That's a vague sort of title, but we'll let Keith Morey represent.
Yeah, so this is the same resolution memorandum of understanding for the piece of property between I-15 and 500 West on Lakeview Parkway in Southwest Provo. And this is another site that we've allocated as a commercial development opportunity. And we have both an owner and a prospective developer that are interested in doing a project on this site. We don't have signed lease agreements or anything that make this definitive, but they have expressed an interest in asking us to preserve this opportunity to incentivize if an appropriate situation arose. And so we're asking the board to please approve this resolution and MOU as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? This meeting could be longer if you ask questions. Just if that's exciting to anyone. All right, seeing none, we'll open this item for public comment. All right, I don't see any public comment. A motion is needed to adopt this resolution for the board.
I'll make a motion for a joint resolution announcing the intention of Provo City and the Redevelopment Agency to prepare a joint development agreement for commercial development of a store in the West Provo.
Great, that was Board Member McKay. Is there another board member?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Board Member Hoban. Then we will call for a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor Fillmore.
Yes.
Great. Board Member Handley is absent. Board Member Hoban,
Yes.
Board Member McKay,
Yes.
Board Member Shipley,
Yes.
Board Member Whipple,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So that passes with 6 in favor and 1 excused. That is all of the items for the Redevelopment Agency of Provo. There's no objection. We will now adjourn the Redevelopment Agency of Provo by unanimous consent. If you object, please speak up. All right, thank you.